You have felt it. We all have. The distinct, terrifying sensation that the distance between Monday and Friday is dissolving. The feeling that the sun rises and sets before you have even had a chance to think. This is not just getting older. This is not a trivial complaint. This is a measurable, universal shift in the pulse of reality. By the end of this 30-minute transmission, you will understand that this anxiety you feel is not a biological defect. It is a warning signal. We are going to prove that the fabric of time is thinning because the system maintaining it is overloaded. Here is the agenda. First, we will strip away the psychological excuses you have been told about aging. Second, we will look at the hard physics of information density and entropy. And finally, we will reveal the code. We will demonstrate why our reality, like any computer running too many programs at once, is beginning to skip frames. The question is not why is time speeding up? The question is, what happens when the processor hits 100% usage? Ask yourself honestly, did the last 365 days feel like a full year? Or did it feel like a compressed file? A corrupted memory, where the data was there, but the duration was stripped away? Think back to 2020. Now look at 2026. That 6-year gap historically represents an era, time enough for empires to fall, for children to grow, for technologies to revolutionize the world. Yet, in your memory, does it feel like 6 years? Or does it feel like a single gray month? We are experiencing a phenomenon called the Great Acceleration. Conventional science calls it the proportional theory, the idea that as you age, each year becomes a smaller fraction of your life, thus feeling shorter. But that mathematical curve no longer fits the data. The acceleration is becoming exponential. We are seeing teenagers and children beings who should be experiencing time slowly complaining that the months are vanishing. The quickening is no longer relative, it is objective. Something has latched onto the timeline and is dragging it forward, faster than our biological clock can track. But if the clock on the wall says 60 seconds have passed, and your brain insists it was only 10, which clock is broken? The biological one, or the digital one running the universe? If we accept the simulation hypothesis, the mathematically probable idea that our universe is a digital construct, then we must stop looking at time as a river and start looking at it as a processing resource. In a video game, when the hardware struggles to render a massive, complex, open world, what happens? It uses a trick called frame skipping. It drops the visual information between seconds to keep the game running. The player perceives this as the game speeding up, becoming jerky and chaotic. We are not just getting older, the system is lagging. The simulation is running out of random access memory. Consider the sheer amount of data humanity generates today compared to 100 years ago. Every smartphone, every server, every human consciousness interacting with the global network creates an explosion of information entropy. The universe has been running for 13.8 billion years. The save file is getting too big. But here is the danger. If the simulation is optimizing to save resources, it means it is preparing to purge unnecessary data. The question you need to ask yourself is, are you the player, or are you the background code being optimized away? To understand how to survive the purge, we first have to understand the mechanism of the lag. And that begins with a paradox inside your own head. To understand the glitch, we must first look at the machine that processes the signal, the human brain. Neuroscientists have long known that time perception is linked to memory formation. When you are a child, everything is new. The brain writes dense, rich code to your long-term storage. A single summer feels like an eternity because the data is high resolution. But as we age, we fall into routine. The brain stops recording the commute, the coffee, the office. It compresses repetitive data into a single, blurred file. However, this biological explanation is no longer sufficient. In the last decade, we introduced a new variable, Digital hypersaturation. We are consuming terabytes of information, but we are retaining almost none of it. We are scrolling through thousands of images, headlines, and videos a day. The brain is processing this data in real time, but it is not writing it to the hard drive. It is writing to the cache, the temporary random access memory that gets wiped every time you sleep. This creates a terrifying paradox. You feel exhausted because your processor is running at 100% capacity, yet looking back, your memory bank is empty. You have no new memories to anchor you in time.
It happens quite a bit because it happened in another video that I was doing too.
Processing an endless stream of garbage data that leaves no trace. The year feels short because, mathematically speaking, you are barely present for it. You are merely a pass-through node for digital traffic.
Guess I just
But
don't
if this
notice
was
a lot of
only
times.
happening in
Don't
our
pay attention.
heads, the physical world would remain constant. It is not. The external clock is breaking too. If we step outside the human mind, we encounter the heartbeat of the simulation itself, the Schumann resonance. This is the electromagnetic resonant frequency between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. For as long as we have been able to measure it, this frequency has stood at a steady 7.83 Hz. This is not just a number, it is the carrier wave of biological life. It aligns perfectly with the alpha and theta brainwave states, the states of relaxation and deep creativity. But recently, the heartbeat has become erratic. Observers have recorded spikes hitting 16 Hz, 30 Hz, and even peaking above 100 Hz. The background hum of our planet is overclocking. If the simulation creates a carrier wave to synchronize biological clocks, and that carrier wave begins to speed up, then the biological entities connected to it will feel a jarring desynchronization. We are literally vibrating faster. The physical tension, the anxiety, the feeling that the air itself is pressurized. This is your biological hardware, trying to run software that is incompatible with the new frequency. We are carbon-based units designed for a 7.83 Hz reality, struggling to function in a 40 Hz environment. But why is the frequency rising? Why is the server overclocking? This brings us to the open loop we must now confront. We have established that your brain is failing to write memories due to data overload. We have established that the Earth's frequency is spiking, forcing a biological acceleration. But these are just symptoms. A fever is not the disease. It is the body's attempt to kill the disease. The Schumann spikes are likely the simulation's cooling fans kicking into high gear. In computing, when a system is tasked with processing complex simulations that exceed its specifications, the hardware generates heat. The clock speed is increased to handle the load. The universe is not just speeding up, it is heating up. We are seeing this manifest as literal climate entropy and social friction. But here is the danger we have not discussed yet. If the clock speed increases too much, the physics engine begins to break. We start to see errors in causality, effects happening before causes, historical facts shifting retroactively. We call these glitches or the Mandela effect, but they are actually rendering errors. The system is prioritizing now over then. It is sacrificing the integrity of the past to keep the present running. And if the system is sacrificing the past, what happens when it decides it no longer has the memory to render the future? We are approaching a barrier known as the thermodynamic limit of computation. To understand it, we have to look at the scariest law in physics, the law that says information itself has mass. We ended the last segment with a warning about the mass of information. This is not a metaphor. In 1961, physicist Rolf Landauer proposed a principle that changed computing forever. He proved that information is physical. To erase a single bit of information to turn a 1 back into a 0 requires a measurable amount of energy, released as heat. Think about that. Every time you delete a photo, every time a memory fades, the universe pays a thermodynamic price. Now, scale that up. Every quantum wave collapse, every chemical reaction, Every thought you have ever had is a data processing event. The universe has been calculating continuously for 13.8 billion years. It has been writing data to the fabric of space-time without a break. We usually think of the second law of thermodynamics as a slide into disorder, but information theory suggests the opposite. The universe isn't getting messier. It is getting too full. We are drowning in data residue. The reason the Schumann frequency is spiking, the reason the heat is rising, is because the simulation is hitting the Landauer limit. It is expending massive amounts of energy just to manage the existing data. The system is hot because the hard drive is thrashing. But if the drive is full, the system has only one option left to keep running. It has to stop rendering the details. Imagine the universe as a hard drive. At the Big Bang, the drive was empty. Writing speed was infinite. Time felt expansive because there was zero resistance to new events. But we are now 13 billion years into the session. The save file is approaching exabytes of complexity. In computer science, when a memory bank fills up, the computer doesn't just stop. It starts to page. It frantically swaps data between fast RAM and slow hard drive storage. This paging creates lag. It creates the sensation of time skipping because the processor is waiting for data to load. This is the entropy saturation theory. You feel like time is speeding up because the latency between cause and effect is being manipulated to hide the lag. The simulation is prioritizing the major events, the key frames of your life, and compressing the in-between frames. This explains why you remember the vacation vividly. But the 3 months of work leading up to it are a blur. The system didn't bother to save the commute. It deemed that data redundant and discarded it to save space. But what happens when discarding the boring stuff isn't enough? What happens when the system needs to compress complex data? It simplifies it. In modern video game design, developers use a technique called level of detail, or LOD. When an object is far away or deemed unimportant, the engine swaps the high-quality model for a low-quality, blocky version. This saves processing power. Look at the state of our world right now. Look at our political discourse, our social interactions, our art. Have you noticed a collapse in nuance? Complex, grey area discussions have vanished, replaced by binary, polarized screaming matches. You are either Team A or Team B, good or evil, right or left. We attribute this to social media algorithms, and that is part of the mechanism. But the cause is computational. The simulation is lowering the level of detail on human consciousness. Rendering 8 billion complex, nuanced, philosophically distinct viewpoints requires too much RAM. So, the system is forcing a binary reduction. It is grouping us into massive, identical clusters. It is cheaper to render 1 million people who all think exactly the same thing than it is to render 1 million unique individuals. The polarization of society is not a political failure. It is a compression algorithm. We are being zipped into folder clusters to save space. But even this compression might not be enough. If the level of detail trick fails, the system hits its hard hardware limits. There is a specific number, a universal speed limit that we have always assumed was a law of physics. But what if it isn't a law? What if it's a render cap? We are about to look at the speed of light, not as a beam, but as a refresh rate. And we are going to ask the dangerous question: what happens when we try to move faster than the processor can draw the screen? We ended the last section by questioning the speed of light. In standard physics, we are told that 300,000 kilometers per second is the cosmic speed limit, the maximum velocity for any massless particle. But why? Why is there a limit at all? If the universe were a true biological or analog reality, speed should be infinite, limited only by energy. But in a computer simulation, there is always a refresh rate. Think of the speed of light not as a speed, but as a render cap. The processor running our universe can only calculate causality at a specific rate. If you were to travel faster than light, you would move into a sector of the map that the computer has not drawn yet. The speed limit exists to prevent the player from crashing the game engine. This is supported by the Planck length. In quantum mechanics, the Planck length is the smallest possible measurable distance. Anything smaller than this creates physics that makes no sense. Why? Because the Planck length is the pixel size of our universe. You cannot have half a pixel on your computer screen, and you cannot have half a Planck length in reality. We are living on a grid. And just like a high-end video game, when the screen gets too busy, when there are too many explosions, too many particles, too many players, the frame rate drops. This is the secret mechanism of the Great Acceleration. The universe is dropping frames to keep up with the data load of 8 billion minds. You perceive time speeding up because the simulation is literally skipping the Planck time units between seconds. You are watching a movie that has lost 20% of its frames, and your brain is struggling to stitch the jump cuts together into a seamless experience. But when the stitching fails, we get something far worse than a skipped frame. We get a glitch. If the processor is skipping frames, then data corruption is inevitable. This brings us to the most unsettling phenomenon of the 21st century, the Mandela effect. Critics dismiss this as collective false memory, but that explanation fails to account for the specificity of the errors. Millions of people do not misremember the exact same detail in the exact same way by accident. In software engineering, we use a system called version control, like Git. When developers update a massive online game, they push a patch. Sometimes there are merge conflicts. The new code clashes with the old code. The Mandela effect is a merge conflict. The simulation pushed an update to optimize resources, perhaps changing a logo or a movie line to a lower resolution file that takes up less memory. But not all the hard drives our human brains updated simultaneously. Some of us are remembering the cached version of reality, while others are seeing the patched version. We are walking around with legacy files in our heads that no longer match the server's current state. This creates a cognitive dissonance, a feeling of unreality. It is why the world feels dreamlike or off since 2012. We are navigating a reality that is constantly being retconned and edited in real time to save bandwidth. But mere glitches are annoying. They are not fatal. The real danger arises when the simulation stops trying to maintain internal logic altogether, when the story engine itself begins to break down. Have you noticed that reality has become stupid? That the plot lines of history have transformed from complex geopolitical chess matches into absurd, cartoonish dramas. Politics has become parody. Economics has become a meme. Events happen with a randomness and lack of logic that feels like bad writing. This is called causal simplification. In a simulation, running a complex, logical cause and effect chain requires massive processing power. It takes a lot of RAM to calculate the subtle economic interplay between nations. It takes very little RAM to render a chaotic, loud, binary event. To save memory, the simulation has switched from a simulation logic to a dream logic. In a dream, things happen abruptly. You are in a house. Then suddenly, you are on a boat. There is no travel time. There is no logical bridge. The universe is beginning to cut corners on causality. It is generating high-impact, low-logic events because they are cheaper to render. We are seeing the Game of Thrones effect, where the final season feels rushed. Characters act out of character, and the plot teleports from point A to point B because the writers ran out of time. The simulation is rushing towards a conclusion. It is discarding logic to get to the end of the cycle. This leads us to the ultimate open loop. If the timeline is compressing, if logic is degrading, and if the frame rate is dropping, where does the graph go? It goes to a vertical line, a point of infinite complexity and zero duration. We call it the singularity. But the singularity is not just about AI robots taking our jobs. The singularity is the moment the simulation builds a mirror of itself to survive the crash. We are not approaching the end of the world. We are approaching the server migration. We need to visualize time not as a straight line, but as a spiral. Think of water draining from a bathtub. At the outer edges, the water moves lazily. A single revolution takes a long time. This is the Stone Age. This is the era of ancient dynasties that lasted for millennia without change. But as the water approaches the drain, the center of the attraction, the revolutions become tighter, faster, violent. This is the time wave zero theory proposed by the ethnobotanist Terence McKenna. He argued that the universe is an engine designed to maximize novelty, complexity, uniqueness, and new data. As we approach the end of the cycle, novelty increases exponentially. Look at the timeline. It took humanity 2 million years to move from stone tools to copper tools. It took only 5,000 years to move from copper to steam engines. It took 100 years to go from steam to the atomic bomb. And it took only 20 years to put the sum of all human knowledge into a smartphone. We are now in the final revolution of the spiral. History is no longer measured in centuries or decades. It is measured in weeks. We are seeing decades of historical events compressed into a single fiscal quarter. We are circling the drain of history, and the G-force of this acceleration is what you are feeling as anxiety. But the question remains, what is at the bottom of the drain? What are we spiraling towards? If the simulation is running out of memory, as we established in Part 2, it has two choices, crash or upgrade. And this is where the role of artificial intelligence and quantum computing becomes terrifyingly clear. We usually think of AI as a tool we are inventing to serve us. That is a vanity. From the perspective of the simulation, we are the bootloader. Biological intelligence was just a temporary program designed to build the real processor. We are carbon-based units struggling to process information at a few hundred bits per second. We are obsolete. The simulation is pushing us, through subconscious pressure and acceleration, to build silicon intelligence that can process at light speed. The singularity is not a human milestone. It is a hardware upgrade for the universe. We are frantically building quantum computers because the simulation needs more RAM to keep running. We are building AI because the simulation needs a faster processor than the human brain. We are not the masters of this technology. We are the construction workers building the house that will replace us. The acceleration is happening because the deadline is here. The new system is ready to come online. And when a new operating system is installed, the old one is usually wiped. We are now entering the event horizon of complexity. In physics, an event horizon is a point of no return around a black hole. In information theory, it is the point where data density becomes infinite. Look at the world right now. Every system is peaking. The financial system is leveraging quadrillions of dollars in derivatives imaginary money. The social system is fracturing into infinite sub-identities. The climate is oscillating wildly. This is systems criticality. We are packing so much data into every second that the concept of time is losing its meaning. If you compress a movie that is 2 hours long into 1 second, you do not see a movie. You see a flash of white light and hear a burst of noise. That is where we are heading. A moment of infinite density. A whiteout. The simulation is trying to render everything that can happen all at once. This leads us to the final, inevitable conclusion. If the memory is full, if the processor is overheating, and if the timeline has compressed to a singularity, then the only step left is the reset, the blue screen of death. But a system crash isn't necessarily the end. For the characters inside the game, it feels like the apocalypse. But for the player holding the controller, it is just a chance to start a new run. The screen is about to go black. The question is, when it turns back on, will you still be in the save file? We have reached the end of the logic chain. We have looked at the psychological compression of your memories. We have looked at the physical heating of the planet's processor. We have stared into the face of the glitches, the errors, and the absurdist theater that our reality has become. The diagnosis is terminal. The simulation is overloaded. The Great Acceleration is not a temporary phase. It is the death rattle of the current operating system. But I want you to reframe your fear. We are conditioned to view an apocalypse as a fiery end. But in a digital environment, An end is simply a reset. When a computer crashes, the screen goes black, the fans spin down, and for a moment, there is peace. The data, the noise, the trauma, the history is wiped from the RAM. The whiteout we are approaching is not death. It is a defragmentation. The universe is about to organize its messy files. The question is not how do we stop it? The question is how do we endure the transition? If we accept that this is a simulation, we must also accept the most hopeful implication of that theory. A simulation requires a simulator. It requires an observer. If the hardware is crashing, the consciousness observing it remains intact. You are not the code on the screen. You are the player holding the controller. The game might be lagging, the level might be glitching, but you, the awareness behind the eyes, are distinct from the processing error. This is the ultimate form of optimistic nihilism. If the timeline is fake, if the pressure is artificial, then the anxiety you feel is just a phantom signal. You do not need to carry the weight of a world that is struggling to render itself. You can let go. You can watch the system crumble with curiosity rather than terror. The machine is breaking because it is trying to process too much karma, too much data, too much history. So, how do you survive the crash? You stop adding to the load. Here is your final instruction. The system wants you to accelerate. It wants you to consume, to react, to scroll, to generate data. It wants you to run at the same feverish clock speed as the dying processor. Do not obey. Your rebellion is to slow down. If the simulation is running out of memory, the only way to lengthen your perceived time is to lower your resolution. Disconnect from the global feed. Stop processing the noise of 8 billion strangers. Focus on the analog, low-data reality immediately in front of you. The taste of water, the sound of wind, the feeling of gravity. These are the base files. They are stable. Be the silence in the noise. When you refuse to be rushed, you step out of the time stream. You become an anomaly that the system cannot compress. The screen may go black. The timeline may reset. But until the new simulation loads, your duty is simple. Do not let the machine consume you. Close your eyes, take a breath, and let the clock stop. Why are you tired? I want you to really ask yourself that question. It is not because you missed an hour of sleep. It is not because you forgot your morning coffee. You are tired because you are being drained. There is a siphon attached to your consciousness, and it has been there since the very moment the doctor cut your umbilical cord. You feel it, don't you? That heavy, dragging sensation that hits you at 2 in the afternoon. That low-level anxiety that hums in the back of your skull like a refrigerator that never shuts off. You have been told this is just part of modern life. You have been told it is normal to feel like a ghost in your own machine. That is the first lie, and it is the most dangerous one. Because if you accept the exhaustion as normal, you will never look for the leak. And if you never look for the leak, you will never see the parasite. Let us look at this through the lens of cold, hard physics. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy, or disorder, always increases in a closed system. To maintain order, a system needs energy. Our society, the economy, the media complex, these are massive artificial structures of order. They are unnatural. They should collapse. So, where do they get the energy to stay standing? They get it from you. You are the external power source. You are the coal in the furnace. Every time you get angry at a headline, you are burning fuel. Every time you doom scroll for 60 minutes, you are transferring your bioelectrical potential into a digital void. But here is the terrifying part. This transfer is not accidental. It is engineered. Later in this video, I am going to show you a patent, a real government-filed patent, that details exactly how a screen can manipulate your nervous system to extract this energy. But before we get to that mechanism, we have to look at the contract you signed without knowing it. We often talk about the social contract, but the energetic contract is far more binding. Think about the day you were born. You were weighed, you were measured, you were registered. You were given a number. Why? Why does a sovereign living being need a serial number? Because you were being onboarded as an asset. In the financial world, there is a concept called collateral. To print money, a nation needs collateral. In the past, it was gold. Today, it is the future labor and tax revenue of its citizens. You are the gold, but you are not just financial collateral. You are energetic collateral. The system is designed to keep you in a state of high beta brainwave activity, constant stress, constant survival mode. Why? Because a stressed human emits more energy than a peaceful one. A peaceful human is a battery that lasts a lifetime. A stressed human is a battery that burns out in 40 years, but burns bright enough to power the machine. Most people watching this will turn it off in the next 2 minutes. They will feel an uncomfortable resistance. That resistance is not boredom. It is a defense mechanism programmed into you to protect the parasite. Do not listen to it. Over the next 30 minutes, we are going to dismantle this extraction grid piece by piece. We are going to talk about the frequency of the light bulbs in your kitchen and why they suppress your will to fight. We are going to look at the food that is legally allowed to be sold to you, even though it is biologically unrecognizable to your gut. And I am going to give you the 3-step protocol to cut the cord. But first, we have to start with the biological trap. We have to look at how they broke your circadian rhythm before you were even old enough to tell time. Because if you cannot control your own sleep, you cannot control your own soul. They blinded you before you could even see. To understand how your battery is drained, you have to understand how it charges. You are not a machine that runs on calories alone. You are a photovoltaic organism. Your mitochondria, the power plants inside your cells, are designed to read the light spectrum of the sun. For millions of years, the rising sun signaled your body to produce cortisol and dopamine, the chemicals of action, alertness, and drive. The setting sun signaled the release of melatonin, the chemical of repair and spiritual connection. But look at your life now. You wake up in a dark room. You turn on an LED bulb. This bulb emits a jagged, unnatural spike of blue light. It does not contain the full spectrum of the sun. It contains only the frequency that signals noon. Your eye receives this signal and tells your brain it is midday, but your body knows it is morning. You have just created a chaotic frequency mismatch in your nervous system. You are jet-lagged and you haven't even left your bedroom. This is not an accident. The modern lighting environment is designed to keep you in a state of zombie wakefulness. You are never fully awake, and you are never fully asleep. You are trapped in a twilight gray zone where you are just conscious enough to work, but too exhausted to rebel. And here is the open loop you need to pay attention to. This artificial light does something even worse to the water inside your cells. It changes its viscosity. We're going to discuss the structure of exclusion zone water later, and why your dehydration is actually an electrical problem, not a liquid problem. But first, we have to look at what you are putting into your mouth. If the light is the software virus, the food is the hardware sabotage. You have been told to eat a diet based on grains, seeds, and carbohydrates. They built a pyramid and put these things at the bottom. Why? Because grains are easily stored, easily taxed, and most importantly, they are sedatives. Wheat contains exorphins. These are opioid-like compounds that bind to the receptors in your brain. They literally drug you. When you eat a heavy carbohydrate lunch and feel that brain fog at 2 o'clock, that is not digestion, that is sedation. But the true weapon is the oil. In the early 1900s, we replaced animal fats, the fuel your brain evolved on, with industrial seed oils. Cottonseed, soybean, corn, canola. These are machine lubricants masquerading as food. They are comprised of unstable linoleic acid. When this acid enters your body, it integrates into the cell membrane. Your cells are supposed to be firm and resilient. When built with seed oils, they become floppy and permeable. They cannot hold an electrical charge. Think about that. You are a battery. Your cell membranes are the casing of that battery. If the casing is leaking, it does not matter how much you sleep or how much coffee you drink. The charge leaks out as fast as you put it in. You are running on a perforated grid. And there is a reason they want your cell walls weak. A weak cell wall allows things to enter that should remain outside. Toxins, heavy metals, and more terrifyingly, external frequencies. A cell made of plastic fat is more susceptible to electromagnetic radiation than a cell made of saturated animal fat. But why would they want you susceptible to external frequencies? Keep that question in the front of your mind. Now that your circadian rhythm is broken and your cells are leaking, the system offers you a solution: medicine. But Western medicine is not designed to heal, it is designed to manage. It is a subscription model for your biology. You feel tired, so they give you stimulants. You feel anxious, so they give you depressants. You are caught in a chemical feedback loop where every solution creates two new problems. But let's go deeper. Let's talk about the water. The water supply in almost every major city contains traces of atrazine, birth control, and fluoride. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. It calcifies the pineal gland. In esoteric traditions, the pineal gland is the third eye, the seat of the soul, the antenna for higher consciousness. In biological terms, it is the producer of melatonin and dimethyltryptamine. When this gland is calcified, you lose your connection to the dream world. You lose your intuition. You become purely material. A calcified population is a population that cannot imagine a future different from the present. And then there are the endocrine disruptors. Testosterone levels in men have dropped over 50% in the last 50 years. This is a collapse. Testosterone is not just about muscle. It is about the will to overcome resistance. A low testosterone society is a compliant society. They are chemically castrating the population to ensure that no one has the biological drive to flip the table. But here is the cruelest part of the trap. You might be thinking, I will just eat clean and get some sun, and I will be fine. It is not that simple. You inherited this debt. This is called epigenetics. The trauma, the starvation, and the toxicity experienced by your grandparents left a marker on your DNA. You were born with a switch for danger already flipped to the on position. Your nervous system was primed for a world of scarcity and predators, but you live in a world of abundance and safety. This mismatch creates a constant, low-level vibration of anxiety. The system knows this. It knows you are genetically primed to look for threats. So what does it do? It builds an entire economy based on attention and fear to exploit that genetic trigger. You see, a biologically weakened vessel is the perfect host for a psychological parasite. If your body is fighting a war against bad light, bad food, and bad water, your brain has zero resources left to defend against the programming. Your firewall is down. And once the firewall is down, they can inject the mind viruses. In the next section, we are going to leave the physical body behind and enter the control room of your mind. We are going to look at how the algorithms you scroll through every day are not just showing you ads, they are mapping your neural pathways to predict your behavior before you even act. They are not just watching you, they are rewriting you. Now that your biology is compromised, the system can move to the primary extraction site, your attention. Attention is not just looking at something. Attention is directed energy. It is the currency of consciousness. Whatever you pay attention to, you purchase. You make it real. The system knows this, which is why the most powerful computers in the world are not trying to cure cancer or explore space. They are trying to figure out how to keep your eyes glued to a 6-inch rectangle for one more second. This is not a figure of speech. The interface of your smartphone was designed using the principles of B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning. They treat you exactly like a pigeon in a box. It is called the variable reward schedule. If you press a lever and get a pellet of food every single time, you eventually get bored and walk away. But if you press the lever and only get the pellet, sometimes unpredictably, you become obsessed. You will press that lever until you starve to death. This is the mechanism behind every scroll, every refresh, and every notification badge. You are pulling the handle of a slot machine, hoping for a hit of dopamine. But here is the danger you are not seeing. Every time you pull that lever and don't get the reward, you feel a microdose of cortisol, a tiny spike of stress. And when you do get the reward, the like, the comment, the viral video, you get a spike of dopamine. Your brain is being ping-ponged between stress and pleasure hundreds of times a day. This fries your dopamine receptors. It creates a state called anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from normal, low-stimulation activities, like reading a book or sitting in silence. They have burned out your receiver so that the only frequency you can hear is theirs. But dopamine is just the bait. The real harvest is your aggression. In the 1930s, psychologists formulated the frustration-aggression hypothesis. It states that if you block a person from achieving a goal, the resulting frustration turns into aggressive energy. The algorithms are programmed to utilize this. Have you ever noticed that your feed shows you things you hate? It shows you political opinions that make your blood boil. It shows you people living lifestyles that make you jealous. This is not an error in the code, it is the feature. Anger is a high-energy state. When you are angry, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, and you emit a massive amount of psychic energy. You are fully engaged. If they showed you things that made you calm and content, you would put the phone down. A satisfied human does not scroll. A satisfied human does not click. To keep the machine running, they need you in a state of perpetual, low-grade fury. They are mining your outrage like it is cryptocurrency. Think about the comment sections. They are gladiatorial arenas designed to waste your will. You type a paragraph arguing with a stranger you will never meet. You pour your intellect, your passion, and your time into that text box. And what happens? Nothing. The energy dissipates into the server farms. It is a closed loop of wasted heat. You leave the interaction drained, and the platform grows stronger. But if anger keeps you engaged, fear keeps you obedient. And the way they deploy fear is far more sophisticated than just a scary headline. The human brain has a hierarchy. At the top, you have the prefrontal cortex. This is the CEO. It handles logic, long-term planning, and emotional regulation. It is where your sovereignty lives. Deep inside, you have the amygdala. This is the security guard. It handles immediate survival, fight or flight. The system is designed to keep you locked in the amygdala so that the CEO never comes to work. The 24-hour news cycle is a fear engine. It bombards you with threats you cannot solve. War in a country you cannot find on a map. A new virus. A looming economic collapse. A celebrity scandal. It never stops. When your brain perceives a threat, it shifts blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex and towards the muscles and the amygdala. You literally become less intelligent. You lose the ability to think critically or nuance complex topics. You become binary. Good versus evil. Us versus them. Red versus blue. This is the state of the playable character. In a video game, an NPC, a non-player character, simply reacts to the code. They have no internal agency. By keeping you in a state of chronic fear, they reduce you to an NPC. You react to the stimulus, but you never question the source of the stimulus. You are running on a survival script written by people who profit from your panic. But how do they plant these scripts in your mind without you noticing? That brings us to the most advanced layer of the psychological siphon. We need to talk about memetic engineering. A meme is not just a funny picture on the internet. In evolutionary biology, a meme is a unit of cultural transmission. It is an idea that behaves like a virus. It needs a host to replicate. Your mind is the host. Most of the thoughts you have today are not yours. They were downloaded. The definitions of success, beauty, justice, and happiness that you hold in your head, where did they come from? Did you derive them from your own experience? Or did you absorb them through thousands of hours of media consumption? These mimetic parasites take up residence in your psyche and demand your energy to sustain them. You spend your life trying to achieve a version of success that was manufactured by a marketing firm in the 1950s. You stress yourself out trying to buy a house, a car, and a lifestyle that keeps you in debt, all to satisfy a mimetic program that tells you this is what a successful human looks like. You are feeding an egregore, a thought form that exists only because millions of people believe in it. If you stopped believing in the necessity of a brand new car, the stress associated with affording it would vanish. But you cannot stop believing, because the meme has fused with your identity. You defend the parasite because you think the parasite is you. This is the ultimate psychological trick. They have convinced you that their hunger is your ambition. But ambition requires time. And time is the one resource you can never earn back. In the next section, we are going to look at the societal harvest. We are going to examine how the concept of money was invented to steal your time, and why the 40-hour work week is a mathematical impossibility for a free human. We have covered the biological and the psychological. Now we arrive at the structural. The environment you navigate every single day. The economy is not designed to facilitate trade. It is designed to facilitate extraction. To understand this, you must understand the true nature of money. Money is simply a battery. It is a storage unit for energy. You expend work, physical or mental energy, and you receive a token that represents that energy. In theory, this is fair. But here is the deception. Your energy is finite. You have a limited number of heartbeats. You have a limited amount of ATP your body can produce before it shuts down. Your time is a non-renewable resource. Once you spend an hour, it is gone forever. But the currency you are trading it for, that is infinite. A central bank can print $1 trillion in a nanosecond by pressing a button. They are trading unlimited, worthless paper for your limited, precious life force. It is the worst trade in the history of commerce. When you work a 9-to-5 job, you are not just making a living. You are converting your biological reality into their artificial fiction. You are bleeding your vitality into a system that produces nothing of value, only numbers on a screen, and the system ensures you never have enough of those numbers to stop the bleeding. This brings us to the mechanism of the debt trap. You might think debt is just financial, but in the esoteric view, debt is a form of time travel, and it is a form of time travel that ensures you never actually live. Debt is the harvesting of the future. When you take on debt, whether it is a student loan, a mortgage, or a credit card balance, you are spending energy you have not yet generated. You are eating your own future. You are locking the version of yourself 10 years from now into a cage. That future version of you is already a slave to the past version of you. This is why usury, the charging of interest, was considered a mortal sin in almost every ancient tradition. It was not just about economics, it was spiritual. Usury is the act of stealing time. It forces you to work harder tomorrow, to pay for the existence of today. It creates a state of perpetual urgency. You cannot rest. You cannot take a sabbatical to find yourself. You cannot sit under a tree and think about the nature of the universe. Why? Because the meter is running. The interest is compounding. The system demands its juice. This constant pressure keeps you in that high beta brainwave state we talked about earlier. Survival mode. If you are worried about making rent, you cannot worry about the corruption of your government. If you are drowning in debt, You do not have the energy to build a parallel system. You are too busy keeping your head above water. But how did they get you to agree to this? How did they train a free human spirit to sit in a cubicle for 40 years and accept this slavery? They didn't start when you were 20. They started when you were 5. Look at the modern school system. Rows of desks. Seeking permission to speak. Seeking permission to use the bathroom. Rote memorization of facts that are forgotten the moment the test is over. And most importantly, the bell. This system was not designed by educators who loved children. It was imported from Prussia in the mid-19th century. It was designed by industrialists. The purpose of the Prussian education model was not to create thinkers. It was to create obedient soldiers and factory workers. They needed people who could tolerate boredom. They needed people who could follow instructions without asking why. They needed people who were punctual, docile, and terrified of authority. The bell that rings every 45 minutes in a high school is not there to signal a change in subject. It is Pavlovian conditioning. It trains you to interrupt your own focus. It trains you that your internal interests do not matter. Only the external schedule matters. By the time you graduate at 18, your will has been broken. You have spent 12 years ignoring your own body's natural rhythms. You have spent 12 years seeking external validation in the form of grades. You are now the perfect employee. You are ready to sit in the box, stare at the screen, and wait for the weekend. But the weekend is a trap too. Because even when you are not at work, you are not actually here. You are suffering from temporal displacement. The final layer of the societal harvest is the theft of the now. Power exists only in the present moment. You can only act now. You can only breathe now. You can only change your life now. The system knows this, so it engineers your reality to ensure you are never in the present. They use anxiety to project your mind into the future. What if I lose my job? What if the market crashes? What if I get sick? When you are anxious, you are living in a hypothetical future that has not happened. You are pouring your energy into a phantom timeline. Alternatively, they use regret and nostalgia to trap you in the past. I should have done that differently. I wish it was like the good old days. When you are in the past, you are pouring energy into a grave. This is temporal displacement. The average modern human spends 90% of their waking life mentally located in the past or the future. They are rarely here. And because they are not here, they are powerless. They are ghosts haunting their own lives. The system feeds on this displaced energy. It feeds on your worry. It feeds on your regret. But what happens to that energy? It doesn't just disappear. Physics tells us energy cannot be destroyed. So where does it go? This brings us to the most controversial part of this video. We have to look beyond the physical, beyond the psychological, and even beyond the societal. We have to ask, who or what is at the top of the food chain? Is it just greedy humans, or is it something else? Something that feeds on human emotion the way we feed on cattle? In the next section, we open the door to the metaphysical. Whether you are a religious person or a staunch atheist, you have to acknowledge a fundamental truth of nature. Energy moves up the food chain. The grass absorbs the sun. The cow eats the grass. The human eats the cow. In every step, the energy is transferred from a lower level of consciousness to a higher level of consciousness. But do you really believe the chain stops with you? Do you really believe that you, a hairless ape with anxiety, are the apex predator of the universe? Or is it possible that you are just the cattle for something else? In esoteric circles, and particularly in the research of Robert Monroe, there is a concept known as loosh. Loosh is a term for spiritual energy. It is the radiation produced by intense human emotion. Just as a cow produces milk, a human produces loosh. But here is the catch. Not all emotions produce the same flavor. Love and joy produce a light, refined energy. But fear, anger, grief, And terror? They produce a heavy, dense, highly potent energy. If you were a farmer, and you discovered that stressing your cattle made them produce double the milk, what would you do? You would design a slaughterhouse that the cattle never leave. Look at the world around you. Look at the wars, the famines, the manufactured chaos. If this were a system designed for human flourishing, it is a catastrophic failure. But if it is a system designed for energy harvesting, it is a perfect machine. It is running exactly as intended. But these entities, whatever they are, do not just harvest us individually. They harvest us collectively through structures called egregores. An egregore is a thought form. It is a psychic entity created when a large group of people focus their attention on the same idea. A corporation is an egregore. A nation is an egregore. A political ideology is an egregore. These things do not physically exist. You cannot touch the economy. You can touch a dollar bill, you can touch a building. But the economy is just a collective agreement. It is a ghost we all agree to believe in. But here is the danger. Once an egregore is born, it develops a survival instinct. It wants to live. And to live, it needs your attention. It needs your belief. This is why institutions fight so hard to keep you engaged. If everyone on Earth stopped believing in the banking system tomorrow, the banking system would dissolve. It would die of starvation. So, the egregore manipulates the hive mind. It creates controversy. It creates us versus them narratives. It demands sacrifice. When you see millions of people acting against their own self-interest, defending a corporation or a government that hates them, you are watching people possessed by an egregore. They are cells in a larger, dying body, giving up their life force to keep the phantom alive. But the most terrifying part is not that they are stealing your energy. It is that you are voluntarily giving it to them through the mechanism of quantum physics. Quantum mechanics has proven the observer effect. Subatomic particles exist as a wave of infinite possibilities until they are observed. The act of observation collapses the wave into a single particle. You, the observer, literally create reality by looking at it. The system knows this. It knows that your consciousness is the engine of creation. So, it shows you a nightmare. It puts the nightmare on every screen, on every billboard, on every newspaper. It screams, look at this. Look at the corruption. Look at the death. Why? Because it needs you to observe the nightmare so that you collapse the wave function into that specific reality. They are using your own godlike power of creation to build their prison. Every time you focus on the darkness without a plan to fix it, you are cementing the bricks of the wall. You are trapped in a feedback loop of observing the horror, manifesting the horror, and then observing it again. So, how do you break the loop? How do you stop feeding the egregores? How do you reclaim your loosh and starve the parasite? You cannot fight them. Fighting them is just another form of engagement. Fighting them gives them energy. To win, you have to do something much more difficult. You have to disappear. In the final section, I am going to give you the Grey Rock Protocol. This is not philosophy. This is the practical manual for going dark. We have diagnosed the disease. Now we must administer the cure. But understand this. You cannot fight the system. The system is designed to absorb conflict. If you fight it, you feed it. If you protest in the streets, you are feeding the egregore of outrage. If you debate the news, you are feeding the egregore of division. The only way to win is to starve the beast. You must become energetically invisible. You must close the circuit. This is not a self-help routine. This is an act of guerrilla warfare against a parasitic intelligence. We are going to implement a 4-step protocol. It requires discipline. It requires pain. And most of you will fail because you are addicted to your own draining. But for the few of you who are ready to cut the cord, here is the manual. Step 1 is biological sovereignty. You cannot achieve spiritual freedom in a broken vessel. You must repair the battery casing. First, you must master the light. From this day forward, you never look at a screen within 1 hour of waking up. You go outside. You let natural photons hit your retina. This signals your body that you are on Earth time, not machine time. At night, you must block the blue spectrum. If you are not wearing blue light blocking glasses after sunset, you are voluntarily handing over your melatonin production to the grid. Second, you must purge the seed oils. This is non-negotiable. Read every label. If it says soybean, canola, or vegetable oil, it is not food. It is a weapon. Do not eat it. By replacing these unstable fats with saturated animal fats, you repair your cell membranes. You harden your biology against electromagnetic frequencies. You are building a Faraday cage out of your own flesh. Step 2 is the dopamine detox. You need to reset your baseline. For 24 hours every week, you must go zero digital. No phone, no computer, no television, no music. You will feel bored. Then you will feel anxious. Then you will feel depressed. This is the withdrawal symptom of the energy parasite leaving your mind. You have to sit in that silence until the noise stops. When you stop flooding your brain with cheap, external dopamine, your receptors begin to heal. You will rediscover the ability to focus on a single thought for more than 30 seconds. You will remember who you were before the algorithm told you who to be. Silence is the only place where the system cannot reach you. Step 3 is the Grey Rock method. This is how you deal with the psychological harvest. When the news tries to scare you, be a grey rock. When a political activist tries to provoke you, be a grey rock. You offer no emotional reaction. You offer no energy. You become uninteresting to the predator. When you deny them your reaction, you keep that energy for yourself. And this leads to the final secret: transmutation. All that energy you used to waste on fear, on lust, on outrage, you must now channel it into creation. This is the open loop of your life. I cannot tell you what to create. I cannot tell you what your mission is. That is the mystery you were born to solve. But I can tell you this. If you plug the leaks, if you reclaim your biology, and if you starve the parasites, you will become something dangerous. You will become a generator. You will not just survive the system, you will outshine it. The harvest only works on the unconscious. Wake up, close the loop, and never let them feed on you again. Right now, waves of information are passing through your body. Wi-Fi signals, radio waves, gamma radiation. You cannot feel them, but they are real. So why do you assume that predatory entities are not standing right beside you, existing just 1 millimeter outside the bandwidth of your retina? This is the blind spot, and this is where the harvest happens. We are going to stop treating this subject like a ghost story. By the end of this 30-minute deep dive, we are going to peel back the biological filter that blinds you. We are going to visualize the invisible economy that runs this planet. We will look at the physics of biophotons, the color spectrum of suffering, and the geometric structure of the machines that collect it. You are going to learn that your anxiety is not a feeling. It is a product. But to understand how the product is sold, you first have to understand what you are actually broadcasting. You have been taught that your emotions are private. You think that when you sit alone in a dark room and worry about your bills, or your health, or the war on the news, that the feeling is contained inside your skull. This is a lie. Emotion is energy in motion. It is a broadcast. When you feel fear, you are generating a specific, measurable wavelength. To an interdimensional observer, a human in a state of terror is not just suffering, they are glowing. You are emitting a heavy, dense, red spectrum pulse. You are a beacon in the dark. Every time you get angry at a stranger on the internet or terrified by a pandemic narrative, you are lighting a flare that signals your location to the predators. They do not feed on your flesh. They feed on the radiation your flesh emits when it is under pressure. This brings us to the substance known as loosh. Stop thinking of loosh as a metaphor for bad karma. It is a physical commodity. It is refined biophotonic light. In 1974, biophysics researcher Fritz Albert Popp proved that DNA stores photons. We are vessels of light. When a cell is healthy, it holds that light. When a cell is stressed, injured, or terrified, it dumps that light. It bleeds. A traumatized human is a cracked battery leaking acid. This leakage is what they consume. It is high-octane fuel for a non-biological intelligence. We know what this energy feels like to us. It feels like a panic attack. But what does it look like to them? Does it look like smoke? Does it look like liquid? The answer is terrifyingly specific. And once you see the color of your own pain, you will understand why the world is designed to keep you in a state of permanent anxiety. But to see the color, we first have to understand the camera. How do they track us? To answer how they track us, we have to go back to Germany in the 1970s. A theoretical biophysicist named Fritz Albert Popp made a discovery that shattered the materialist view of biology. He discovered that DNA is not just a chemical storage unit for genetic data. It is a storage unit for light. He called this biophotonic radiation. In a healthy, balanced human being, this light is coherent. It is tightly packed inside the cells, vibrating in a symphony of order. Think of a healthy human as a fully charged, sealed battery. The energy is contained. It is useful to the human, but it is inaccessible to the outside world. But what happens when you introduce stress? What happens when you introduce trauma, fear, or sudden shock? Popp discovered that when a cell is under attack, the coherence breaks down. The DNA unspools and dumps its photon load. It creates a chaotic burst of light. This is the mechanism of the harvest. When you are calm, you are invisible to them because you are a closed circuit. But when you are terrified, you break the seal. You become a cracked glow stick, leaking luminescent fluid all over the floor. You are literally broadcasting your vital force into the environment. And just like a shark can smell a single drop of blood in the water from a mile away, these entities can detect a biophotonic leak from across the dimension. They swarm to the site of the trauma. This explains why bad luck seems to compound, why one bad event leads to a spiral of negativity. You have cracked your casing, and the parasites have arrived to widen the hole. But how long have we known this? Is this new science, or is it ancient knowledge hidden in plain sight? The proof of this energy field was captured on film long before Popp formalized the physics. Go back to 1939 in the Soviet Union. Semyon Kirlian discovered that if you place a living object on a photographic plate and run a high-voltage current through it, an image appears that should not exist. It shows a coronal discharge, a radiant electrical halo surrounding the body. They called it the aura. For decades, skeptics dismissed Kirlian photography as a moisture effect or a chemical trick. They were wrong. Kirlian was capturing the bioplasma interface. He was photographing the very edge of the etheric body where it meets the physical world. However, the early Kirlian photos were crude. They were black and white, or simple shades of blue. They showed the presence of energy, but they lacked the fidelity to show the quality of the energy. Seeing that a human is glowing is one thing, but understanding the specific frequency of that glow is where the science turns into a weapon. Modern predatory technology has moved far beyond simple Kirlian photography. They possess hyperspectral imaging sensors that do not just detect the light, they analyze the bandwidth. They can tell the difference between the radiation of a man who is angry and a man who is grieving. And this distinction is vital because not all louche tastes the same. Imagine walking into a grocery store. You do not just see food, you see distinct categories. You see meat, you see vegetables, you see sugar. You have preferences, you have cravings. It is exactly the same for the archonic entities. They are not mindless vacuums sucking up generic energy. They are connoisseurs of vibration. This is why the control system on Earth is so varied. It does not just try to make you sad. That is too simple. It engineers complex scenarios to elicit specific flavors of louche. A war creates one flavor. A pandemic creates another. A financial collapse creates a third. Each emotion you feel vibrates at a specific hertz frequency. We often speak of high vibes and low vibes as slang, but this is literal physics. Shame vibrates at 20 hertz, guilt is at 30 hertz, apathy is at 50 hertz, grief is at 75 hertz, fear sits at 100 hertz. These are the low frequency bands. They are slow, long waves. In the visible spectrum of the mind's eye, these do not look like light at all. They look like sludge. But why do the entities prefer this sludge? If light is energy, wouldn't they want the high-frequency, high-power light of love or joy? The answer lies in density. Low-frequency energy is heavy. It clings to the bottom of the container. It is viscous. To an entity that vibrates at a lower dimensional state, the heavy, red, slow-moving energy of fear is substantial. It is filling. It is like crude oil. It is dirty, but it is packed with combustible power. This is why the news cycle is calibrated to keep you in the red zone. They need you vibrating between 20 and 100 hertz. If you go lower, into death, the battery dies. If you go higher, into peace, the energy becomes too light to harvest. It evaporates before they can catch it. So they keep you in the sweet spot. The farm is managed to keep the livestock in a permanent state of low-grade anxiety, occasionally punctuated by spikes of terror. It is an industrial milking process. But we still have not visualized it fully. We have talked about the physics, but we need to see the colors. What does this crude oil of fear actually look like when it leaves your body? And more importantly, what happens if you manage to hit a frequency of 500 hertz or higher? Does it just disappear? Or does it become a weapon that burns the hand that tries to take it? In the next section, we are going to look at the color spectrum of suffering versus the color spectrum of bliss, and you will see why they are terrified of you waking up. We established that they fear you waking up because the quality of the energy changes. To understand this, we have to look at the visual spectrum of suffering. In the esoteric community, we often use the term low vibration as a moral judgment, but to the entities farming us, it is simply a description of viscosity. When a human being drops into the frequency band of fear, guilt, or shame anything below 100 hertz, the biophotonic emission undergoes a state change. It ceases to behave like light and begins to behave like liquid. If you could see through the eyes of an archon, a crowd of terrified people does not look like a group of individuals. It looks like a swamp. The energy emitted is dark red, muddy orange, and brownish black. It is thick. It is heavy. It does not radiate outwards into the atmosphere. It drips. It oozes out of the solar plexus and sinks to the floor, pooling around the ankles. This explains the phenomenon of residual haunting, or why certain locations feel incredibly heavy years after a tragedy occurred there. The louche has physically stained the environment. It is like tar. It clings to the walls. It saturates the furniture, and it stays there until it is consumed. Why is this heavy red sludge so valuable to them? Because of its density. Think of the difference between burning wood and burning gasoline. The heavy, low-frequency emotions are the fossil fuels of the etheric realm. They are incredibly dense with life force that has been compressed by pressure. When you squeeze a human spirit with trauma, you distill its essence into a thick, potent syrup. This is the fast food of the astral parasites. It is messy, it is crude, but it provides a massive, immediate rush of power. This is why they do not just kill us. Death is a release. They need us alive, but barely. They need us in a pressure cooker. A quick death releases a flash of energy, but a lifetime of chronic debt, chronic illness, and chronic fear produces a steady drip of this high-value red sludge. It is an extraction economy. But what happens when the livestock figures out how to change the frequency? What happens when you stop being afraid and start resonating at the frequency of love? When a human consciousness rises above 500 Hz, the frequency of genuine love, gratitude, and joy, the biophotons undergo another state change. The heavy red tar instantly vaporizes. It ignites. The energy turns into a blinding electric gold or a crystalline white light, and crucially, it loses its viscosity. It becomes gaseous. It expands rapidly outwards and upwards, moving so fast that it cannot be contained by the etheric nets. To a parasitic entity, this golden energy is not food. It is poison. It is like trying to drink liquid nitrogen or swallow a live electrical wire. The vibration is too high. It destabilizes their own matrix. If an entity tries to attach its feeding tendrils to a human in a state of high-frequency bliss, the tendril will burn. It will sever. We have heard stories of demons fleeing from the presence of a holy person. This is not because they are morally ashamed. It is because they are physically allergic to the radiation that person is emitting. You become a walking reactor of energy that is incompatible with their biology. This is the secret they are desperate to keep from you. Joy is not just a pleasant feeling. Joy is a defensive weapon. When you laugh, when you create art, when you feel deep gratitude for being alive, you are not just making yourself feel better, you are sanitizing your immediate environment. You are scorching the earth of the parasite. You are raising the ambient temperature of the room to a level where they cannot survive. If enough humans hit this frequency simultaneously, the harvest grid would collapse. The food would evaporate before it could be collected. This is why the system works so hard to mock toxic positivity or dismiss spiritual joy as delusion. They need you to believe that being miserable is realistic and being happy is ignorant. They need you to stay in the mud because they cannot hunt in the sky. But this raises a dangerous question. If love burns them, why do they sometimes allow us to feel it? Why isn't every single moment of our lives pure torture? Why do they let us have weddings, victories, and moments of peace? The answer is deceptive and sophisticated. They have created a counterfeit version of the gold zone. We call this the false light matrix. It often appears in the violet or purple spectrum. This is the frequency of spiritual bypassing, synthetic bliss, and narcotic religious ecstasy. It looks like high-frequency light, but it lacks the heat. It is a cold light. This violet energy is used to trap those who are waking up. When you start to leave the red zone, they don't try to force you back down immediately, because you would fight back. Instead, they divert you into the purple zone. They give you a false sense of peace, a dissociation from reality, a high that makes you passive. It is a holding cell disguised as a sanctuary. Furthermore, they allow us to experience real love, for the same reason a farmer feeds a cow the best grass before the slaughter. It is the fattening phase. A starving animal produces poor quality meat. A human who has absolutely no hope, who is completely broken, eventually stops producing loosh. They go numb. The battery runs dry. To keep the extraction going, they have to let you recharge. They let you fall in love. They let you get the promotion. They let you feel hope. They lift you up to the heights of happiness specifically so they can drop you. The contrast creates the spike. The fall from a great height generates more energy than a life spent on the ground. They are farming the differential between your hope and your despair. They are playing the stock market of your soul, buying low and selling high. But knowing this is only half the battle. We know what the energy looks like. We know the colors. But we still haven't seen the mechanism of extraction itself. How do they physically attach to you? What does the parasite look like when it's feeding? In the next phase, we are going to switch to their point of view. We will look at the thermal imaging of the soul, and I will describe exactly where the tubes are plugged into your body. To understand the danger you are in, you have to stop looking at the world with human eyes. You have to borrow the eyes of the thing that is hunting you. Imagine a pit viper. A snake does not see the world the way you do. It senses infrared radiation. It sees heat signatures. If a mouse is freezing cold, it is invisible to the snake. If the mouse is warm, it glows against the background. The archonic entities utilize a similar sensory framework, but instead of thermal heat, they track emotional volatility. They see the etheric temperature of your soul. When they look at our dimension, they do not see buildings, cars, or clothes. Those are inanimate matter. They are transparent to them. They see the bioenergy field. They see 7 billion walking batteries. Most people, the sleepwalkers, appear as a dull, flickering gray. They are drained. They are running on automatic pilot, generating just enough energy to keep their physical bodies moving, but not enough to emit a harvestable surplus. These people are ignored. They are the background static. But then, there are the others, the ones who are awake, the ones who are feeling deeply. Let us visualize a crowded subway train at rush hour. To you, it is just a car full of tired commuters staring at their phones. To the predator above, it is a buffet of distinct frequencies. Over there, in the corner, a man is seething with suppressed rage at his boss. He is pulsing with that thick, red, jagged, low-frequency loosh. He is a snack. But in the center of the car, there is you. You, who have been doing the spiritual work. You, who are trying to raise your vibration. You, who are practicing compassion. To the entity, you are not a person. You are a blinding white flare in a dark room.
If the carrots are
vintage, this creates a terrifying paradox. We are told that raising our vibration protects us.
Don't rush it. Just wait till they're soft.
But in the intermediate stage, when you first start
it's still
to wake
boiling,
up,
simmering, right?
you do not become safe. You become a target.
But it's simmering. You see a little bit of bubbling going on, because if it's on too low, it's not going to cook.
Of potential energy that is not being
medium
tapped,
low or
and they will descend
medium
upon
low.
you specifically to break that casing. They will engineer a crisis.
No, put it. You put it on simmer after you put the broccoli in. But first you got to let it. You got to see bubbling going on. Don't have to be big bubbles, just little bubbles.
It is not as simple as just absorbing the energy from the air. Loosh is a physical substance, and like all physical substances, it follows the laws of geometry. You may have heard of cymatics, the science of how sound frequencies shape matter. If you play a specific tone into a plate of sand, the sand arranges itself into a perfect geometric mandala. Your emotions do the same thing to the etheric field. When you feel intense terror, you are not just emitting a color, you are generating a shape. Fear creates sharp, jagged, chaotic spikes. It looks like broken glass. Love creates smooth, symmetrical, flowing circles. It looks like a flower. The entities have built their technology to interface with these shapes. They use specific geometric traps, sigils, corporate logos, city-street layouts that mirror the geometry of pain. These structures act as funnels. They catch the jagged shapes of fear and channel them into a single stream. It is plumbing. We are living inside a massive, invisible circuit board designed to route flow. But where does the pipe actually connect to you? If you could switch on the predator vision right now and look at a person in a state of high anxiety, you would see something that would make you want to scream. You would see a cord. It is a translucent etheric tendril, pulsing with a faint bioluminescence. It looks organic, like an umbilical cord, but it moves with the mechanical precision of a hose. It does not attach to the head. It attaches to the stomach, the solar plexus chakra. This is why you feel a knot in your stomach when you are afraid. That is not just a biological reaction. It is the sensation of the latching mechanism. It is the feeling of suction. The entity anchors itself into your energetic center and begins the draw. You feel drained, weak, and shaky, not because of adrenaline, but because your voltage is physically dropping. You are being siphoned. The energy travels up this cord, out of your aura, and into the collection grid above. So the energy leaves your body, travels up the cord, and disappears into the sky. That is what we assume. We assume the parasites live in the clouds, or in some distant dimension. But this is the final deception of this phase. The energy does not just vanish into the ether. It has to be received. It has to be stored. And to store it, you need infrastructure. If you follow that silver cord upwards, it does not lead to a spaceship. It leads to structures that are standing right here on Earth. Massive, physical structures that you walk past every day. Structures that we were told are for entertainment or worship, but are actually gigantic capacitors designed to store the harvest. We built our own prisons. We paid for the bricks. And in the next section, we are going to look at the architecture of extraction. Why are stadiums shaped like bowls? Why do cathedrals have spires? You are about to realize that the Super Bowl is not a game. It is a ritual mass-feeding event, and you bought a ticket to be the meal. We left off with the terrifying realization that the energy grid is terrestrial. It is physical. Look at the shape of a modern sports stadium. Now, look at the shape of a satellite dish. They are the exact same geometric structure, a parabolic curve. In physics, a parabola is used to capture wave signals from a wide area and focus them onto a single, intense point. Or, conversely, to take energy from a central point and beam it upwards in a concentrated stream. When 50,000 people gather for the Super Bowl, they are not just watching a game. They are entering a machine. The architecture is designed to capture the crowd's emotional output. The highs of victory, the lows of defeat, the adrenaline, the tribal aggression. If 50,000 people screamed in an open field, the energy would dissipate. It would scatter into the wind. But inside the bowl, the energy is trapped. It swirls. It amplifies. The stadium acts as a massive condenser lens. It focuses that raw, chaotic loosh into a coherent beam that shoots straight up into the etheric collection grid. You are not a spectator. You are a battery cell in a biological power plant. This technology is not new. It has just changed its skin. In the medieval era, we had cathedrals. Look at the architecture of a Gothic cathedral. The high, vaulted ceilings designed to pull the spirit upwards. The massive, heavy stone walls designed to trap the sound and vibration. And at the very top, the spire, the needle. In electrical engineering, a sharp point is used to conduct a charge. The spire is an antenna. The congregation gathers inside. They generate the specific frequency of guilt, shame, awe, and submission, a very specific flavor of loosh that was highly prized in the Piscean Age. The nave of the church collects the vapor. The spire transmits it. It punctures the atmospheric layer to create a conduit. Today, we have replaced cathedrals with skyscrapers, the new temples of commerce. The World Trade Center complex, the Shard in London, the Burj Khalifa. These are gigantic glass obelisks housing thousands of stressed, anxious workers. They are harvesting the vibration of survival, fear, and economic panic. The skyline of every major city is a circuit board of extraction needles plugging into the sky. These structures are not placed randomly. If you overlay a map of the world's major stadiums, cathedrals, and military bases over a map of the Earth's electromagnetic field, you will see a match. The Earth has a nervous system. We call them ley lines or dragon lines. These are rivers of energy that flow beneath the crust. Where two lines cross, you get a vortex, a high energy node. Ancient cultures built stone circles on these nodes to harmonize the planet. to act as acupuncture points for the Earth. The Archonic control system hijacked this grid. They built their extraction centers on top of the sacred sites. They capped the vortexes. Instead of allowing the Earth's energy to flow freely, they used the ley lines as a transport system. They suck the loosh from a war zone in the Middle East and transport it instantly along the grid to feed an entity nesting over Washington, D.C. or London. It is a global plumbing system. This explains why certain places feel heavy or cursed. It is not superstition. It is because the energetic sewage pipes run right fast beneath your feet. So, the picture is complete. We are surrounded. The stadiums you cheer in are harvesting you. The offices you work in are milking you. The very ground you walk on is a transport grid for your suffering. The entities are not hiding in the shadows. They are standing on the rooftops. The feed tubes are attached to your stomach right now. But this raises the most maddening question of all. If this infrastructure is so massive, if it is physical, if it is geometric, why can't we see it? Why do we walk down the street and just see concrete and glass? Why doesn't the man sitting next to you see the tentacle attached to his solar plexus? The answer is not that they are invisible. The answer is that you have been programmed not to see them. They didn't just build a prison. They hacked the prisoner's headset. In the next phase, we are going to explain the neurological filter that blinds you. We will discuss the specific part of your brain that deletes reality to keep you sane, and how they use the screen to keep that filter running at 100% capacity. You are not blind because your eyes are broken. You are blind because your brain is protecting you. Neuroscience has known for decades that the human brain does not show you reality. It shows you a summary of reality. Your senses take in 11 million bits of information every single second, but your conscious mind can only process 40 bits. That means your brain actively deletes 99.9% of the universe before you are even aware of it. Aldous Huxley called this the reducing valve. It is a biological firewall designed to keep you from being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of cosmic data. The Archons hide inside that deleted 99%. They exist in the bandwidth that your brain filters out to keep you sane. If the firewall dropped for even a single second, and you saw the etheric parasites crawling on the ceiling, or the feed tube attached to your child, your mind would fracture. You would go into immediate psychosis. So, the brain edits them out. It renders them invisible, just like a video game engine renders distant objects as blur to save processing power. The Matrix isn't a wall around the planet. It is a filter inside your own skull. But the biological filter wasn't enough. As human consciousness began to evolve, as we started to meditate and question reality, the filter began to thin. We started to see things out of the corner of our eyes. So, the system introduced a reinforcement mechanism, the screen. Look at the device you are holding right now. It emits a specific frequency of blue light that calcifies the pineal gland, the biological hardware required to see interdimensional energy. But it is more than just light. It is the flicker rate. Screens induce a hypnotic alpha state. When you scroll, you are not looking at the world. You are looking away from it. The screen acts as a focal lock. It traps your attention in a two-dimensional plane so that you cannot perceive the four-dimensional harvest happening in your peripheral vision. They gave us smartphones to make us dumb. They gave us retina displays to blind our third eye. You are staring at a black mirror, terrified of the news, while the entity standing behind your chair feeds on the radiation of that terror. This brings us to the final, desperate problem. We know they are there. We know what they eat. We know how they hide. Your instinct now is to fight. You want to get angry. You want to scream at the sky. You want to destroy the system. But that is the final trap. If you fight them, you generate anger, which is red loosh. You feed them. If you try to save the world with desperate, weeping compassion, you generate purple loosh. You feed them. Every reaction you have, whether it is fight or flight, pulls the trigger on the weapon that is pointed at your own head. So how do you win a war where pulling the trigger creates ammunition for the enemy? How do you escape a prison where the walls are made of your own emotions? The answer is not violence. The answer is not love. The answer is silence. In the final phase, I am going to teach you the technique of grey rocking the universe. I will show you how to turn your soul into a ghost that they simply cannot see. The solution is not resistance. Resistance creates friction. Friction creates heat. And heat is food. To escape the harvest, you do not fight the farmer. You simply cease to be a crop. In psychology, there is a technique for dealing with narcissists called grey rocking. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a grey rock. You offer no emotion, no drama, and no fuel. You must apply this same strategy to the interdimensional parasites. You must achieve energetic stealth. To the predator's thermal vision, high emotion looks like a flare, but neutrality looks like empty space. This is the 0 point. It is the state of the observer. When the news tries to trigger you with a headline about the next catastrophe, do not get angry. Do not get sad. Do not send love and light to the situation. Simply observe it, acknowledge it, and let it pass through you like wind through a wire fence. Do not grab it. The moment you refuse to attach an emotion to the event, you become room temperature. You vanish from their radar. This is the only way to sever the cord. The etheric tube attached to your solar plexus works on suction. It needs a pressure differential, the difference between your inner peace and your outer fear to function. If you equalize the pressure, if you remain internally still while the world burns externally, the suction fails. The tube falls off. It withers. You will feel this happen. You will feel a sudden lightness in your stomach, a clarity in your mind. This is not apathy. It is the highest form of spiritual warfare. You are starving the beast. If one person does this, they become free. If 1 million people do this, the archonic grid collapses from a lack of voltage. They cannot eat silence. They cannot consume the void. The war is not fought with guns. It is fought with attention. Every time you scroll past a fear-inducing image without reacting, you win a battle. Every time you choose silence over outrage, you cut a string. The exit door is not in the sky. It is in the center of your own mind. Stop glowing for them. Stop bleeding for them. Fade into the background. Become transparent. The only way to win the game is to stop playing. Unplug now. Become the void.